right, guys, what we're going to be talking about in the next, the next several videos, we're going to be doing a three-part series on this topic because it's a lot of information. But we're going to be taking a look at grappling, or the grappling section off the combat blueprint, and we're going to be focusing in on the guard position. Okay, as you know, one of the principles that we will use in the CTAC program is called the combat blueprint. We use the combat blueprint, one, to point out gaps in our knowledge and areas that we may need training. We also use it to choose how we're going to train and make sure that we're covering all the areas that we need to focus on. So today we're going to be taking a look at one of the sections from the ground section. So as you know, in the blueprint, I divide up training on the ground into 5 areas. Area number 1 is grappling, and a lot of times I will divide this into 2 parts. One is just your regular grappling, what you see in combat submission wrestling or Brazilian jiu-jitsu. The second half of it is based on your everyday carry. One of the things I did or started doing about 17 years ago was implementing a everyday carry kit into all of my training. So it started, when I started putting this on and grappling with the guys, it started to change things a little bit. I had to choose some different techniques. I had to start dealing with different positions differently because I had to protect this. And due to that, it started to pretty much build an entirely different curriculum for me. So in that first section, I divided it into 2 parts. Your regular grappling training, which is very important, and your everyday carry grappling. Next to that is going to be ground fighting. You'll see this idea a lot in MMA. When you start to add in striking or additional weaponry when you are in different positions on the ground trying to defend yourself. Area number 3 is counter grappling, sometimes referred to as anti-grappling. What that is a study of grappling and in general what a grappler needs so that you can use it to your advantage. After that is dog boxing. Yes, that is a borrowed term that I borrowed from Chinese boxing. And for me, dog boxing means out of position fighting. Because you don't always get to choose to be in open space. Sometimes you get smashed against the side of a car or a wall. You find yourself in a corner, inside of a vehicle, like in a carjacking scenario. You may be in a seated position. Imagine getting into a fight or having someone kick it off while you're sitting in a restaurant. So a good dog boxer, or the dog boxing program, looks at being able to fight out of multiple different positions. And then lastly is grounded weapons fighting. I call it that because it's different than grappling with a weapon. You see a lot of that now, and it is fantastic to do, and you should. But a lot of the goals that I want to achieve on the ground parallel what I want to achieve on my feet. If I am in a situation where I'm having to defend a firearm, I would like to make space from the threat. I would also like a superior angle, and I'd like to be ahead of time. In other words, I'd like to be able to get to my weapon system sooner than the bad guy. Well, I have to achieve all of these things even if I am on the ground, and sometimes that is difficult to do if I am in a grappling mindset. But like I said, both are important, but that is the difference between grappling, just throwing in a gun or a firearm and grappling, or grounded weapons fighting. Okay, so we are focusing in on the guard position. I divide this area of training up into 3 ways. First off, I can look at what I need to do if I find myself inside the guard. Today we're going to be taking a look at, or the next few videos are going to be taking a look at, what to do if I have someone that I'm dealing with in my guard. I break this up into 3 areas, and the division is based around posting, or the distance I'm going to have between me and the threat. If someone is in my guard, and I have my feet closed, sometimes called closed guard, I call this a close range post. If I can scoot back and I can build a shin frame against them, in other words, I make a little more space, I call this a mid-range post. If I'm able to scoot back even farther, maybe use my foot and a straight leg to maintain space from the opponent. To me, I refer to this as a long-range post. We also have to take into consideration a lot of the other things that we consider when we are looking at any scenario through the CTAC lens. And one is weapons and weapon-based ideas. And we're going to take a look at those today as well. I also have to take into consideration striking, second opponents, different weapons that could be thrown in, like a rock that someone may pick up and use, or just any object that the opponent could get his hands on and use in any moment. Now, due to the fact that we take into consideration that we're going to have on a weapon system, the tactics that I'm going to approach today are going to be a little different than what you would see in a grappling mindset. For me, I want space. We mentioned this earlier as one of the elements that is good for me. Anytime I can be farther away from the threat, it's a good thing. Now, even on the ground in this situation, if I can make that space, the way I look at it is I'd like to get the weapon systems as far away from the threat as possible. So my first reaction would probably be to move out into a long-range post. I may fail to do that because I have an aggressive opponent, they drive into me, or I may have started the fight in a closer range. But generally, that's what I'm trying to do first, is get that space and distance. Space also allows me to get my body set up and aligned so that I can mechanically produce ballistic force. So I can add striking, something a little higher paced and ballistic, into the mix. I'll commonly tell my guys when I'm using this mindset that you have to force me to grapple, or you have to earn grappling. I don't necessarily want to go to it due to the range and the fact that I'm going to have on a weapon system. So today, what we're primarily going to be looking at on this video is what is commonly referred to as the closed guard position, or that close range post. Even though I'd prefer to go long range, today we're going to stay in this range in order to talk about it and show some of the training ideas that we use. All right, guys, so we'll take a look at one of the first drills we'll play. I'm not going to be bugging Coach's base. We're just going to touch on a little bit of the reality of having somebody that's a striker in your guard.
Sir.
Nice. Okay, so again, I'm not bugging the base, but I've got to take a couple of elements into consideration, and one of the first things we look at is movement. So I'm going to play the drill again. Coach is kind of taking care of me, but he can kind of come after me a little more if he'd like. And what I'm going to try to do is work on my movement, specifically side to side and rotation. Get him. Okay, so we take a look at a little movement. Next thing to take a look at is blocking of some sort. What I'm using in the drill is the Pensador from the Kesey Fighting Method. And if you haven't seen that before, what it is, I'm basically just using different formations of my arms to try to protect my head. There's many ways that you can put this together. There's different shapes that you can build to protect your head. But that's the next drill, is just to learn to not just hold it in one place, but to be able to manipulate it side to side to try to pick up some of the pressure that's coming in. So you can have your partner, slow down a little bit, give you a different speed of attack depending on where you're at. So just play for a second. A little more. So far we're just looking at the pieces. One is movement, and one is some sort of blocking. Like I said, we're using more of the shielding right now, but you can plug in anything that you're working on. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is, I'm really not going to give him free rein in this position. He's got good control of his base, and he's got probably 30 years on me, a lot stronger than me, a lot faster than me. So he's being kind, but I have to start to distort his mechanics as much as possible so it helps me survive. One of the ways we do this is a drill we call the rocking guard drill. And it basically looks like this. What I'm going to do is just use my legs to manipulate his base. I'm basically either pulling him forward, tilting him to one side, tilting him to the other side. Sometimes you can even push backward to try to keep him from coming forward. So basically, trying to bug his base. So just like earlier, I'm not doing anything. He's got free rein. He can go to town. It's going to be difficult for me to keep up. Next thing I'm going to take a look at is bugging his base as he's striking. Go. So the only one we really used there was pulling. We didn't tilt left or right. And you can see how it significantly affects the amount of strikes he has available to him. Okay, starting to piece together more of the layers of the drill. So the next thing to take a look at is some offensive options for me. There are different things you can do in my position. You can strike. Some of the basic ones I will use is different elbows that come from framing. One of the reasons is because, though we haven't talked about it, there may be a second opponent who will dive in here in a minute and kick me in the head. If my hands are down at that moment, there's an opportunity that he's going to get me. But I increase my percentages of survival if I can stay inside that shaping and framing idea. So I want to use that tool to strike first, and then you could add other options later. So if I can distort Coach's base there and force the hands to go down, it gives me some options to start to attack him. And again, we don't really have a way of holding a pad here. We'll just kind of demonstrate some of the ideas. But you're in the position to do these things already from the shielding position. Switch up. You just distort the back. Show your ideas. Nice. So, Yeah. Okay, just so we discuss it, one of the points is access to weapon systems too. That's another reason I like the shielding, is because it is also framing. Sometimes you rely heavily on framing and grappling, especially if I pull coach's weight toward me and I need space to move, to strike, or access a weapon system. So for me, a common one, and I look at this a lot on the ground, is just the light. Santa Claus was good to me this year. You know, if I can access that, then everything I'm playing, I could start to use those same ideas with any weapon system. If you have a magazine, I commonly carry one in my pocket. And for that reason, I have it on a magnetic clip so it's easily accessible. I just have to lift it out with the index fingers and I get access to it. Okay, to add to this drill, and again, for this video, we're not making space. We're specifically staying here just to look at some of the options. I want to go to a dominant position. So what are a couple ways that I can sweep from this position? I commonly refer to this as a closed guard sweep because I don't have to unhook my feet if I'm in a closed guard to do the sweep. It's basically the same tilt you saw earlier in the rocking guard drill. I just have to do it at the right time. So as far as timing on it, as he starts to adjust in my guard for the punch, what I'm looking for is adjustment of the knees. Sometimes the knee will scoot in closer, and I'll have an option to just tilt. And as you can see, the feet didn't open here. You can go ahead and brace up, fight your way into a mounted position. I generally don't stay mounted if I'm armed because, again, same principle we talked about earlier. I want space between the weapon system, and I also want the ability to survey the room. Anytime I come up into a knee on stomach, I'll generally smother the hands and switch to a knee on shoulder or neck position, just due to where it places me on the opponent. A lot of times in the knee on stomach, I am accessible to him. I'm in front of him and his weapon, so I like to switch up immediately just to put him in a worse position and put me above him. Switch. Okay, we're looking at different elements and putting them together in drilling. Again, when we put 100% effort into this, the drill starts to change a little bit. So the next element to plug in is just the firearm. And sometimes I won't bug the base so we can look at the different elements, but my job is basically to try to protect this as much as possible. Sometimes I can smother the guy when I pull him down, but he has the ability to get a hand in here. So to control it, one of the two ways I use is I'll come over and I'll grip and I'll just pin the firearm to my body like that, or over the top of the gun, and I pin it. That puts me in a position where I'm going to be doing a one-handed fight as I play this game. So that element you can add into this same drill. It's going to change a lot of things for you. Okay, so we took a look at the closed guard position, and one of the first things we took a look at is just the ability to move. There's many different options. The basic ones we looked at is side to side today. Two of the primary ones we'll look at is also rotation, which is a little tougher if your feet are locked, but you can figure it out and do it. The next thing is being able to protect yourself. And when we do this as a drill, I don't really bug my partner's base because I want him to be able to light me up a little bit and help me experience a little bit of reality. And one of the ways we defended today was the shielding or the pensador, which we're borrowing from Keezy Fighting Method. There are many ways to do this. This is not the only one we train. It's an easy one to get if you're fairly new to the idea. But your goal is to be able to learn to manipulate the structure around your head, not just move your body. And this takes a little time. Sometimes you have to train that outside of a drill like this. A lot of times in Keezy Fighting Method, all they will do is stand and work on manipulation of a shield in order to get good at it. You may have to do that first before even plugging it in to this scenario. But that is the idea of plugging it into this scenario. Slow down a little, and you can adjust the tempo of your partner so that you can train. If you start off, say 20%, in 3 or 4 months, you may be up to a 50% effort and still be pretty good at it. So the next thing we looked at is offensive attacks. You can come out of that structure and just punch. Old school jab cross. There are many that we train. One of the first ones I show from this position is a lot of the elbow options from the structure that we're talking about because they're easy and they allow you to deliver some ballistic power while maintaining some sort of structure around your head. Like we said, another element that we would plug into this drill is I would have a partner roaming around the classroom kicking everybody in the head. You always have to be aware of the second threat or the third threat in the room. This will, one, make you aware of it, and two, start to develop your optics and train them to be aware. In other words, you're going to be looking around for that guy if he's floating around the room, and that's good training. The next thing we did was look at trying to move into a more dominant position. So we looked at a sweeping option. There are many of them, and the one we looked at today I refer to as a closed guard sweep because I don't necessarily have to unhook my feet to do it. I can just do the same tilting move that we learned from the rocking guard drill, and depending on where his base is, I have an opportunity to sweep him. Now for me, I don't spend a lot of time in the mount position, especially when I'm dealing with a scenario where I'm armed or, like I said, we have that guy going around the room punching and kicking people. I prefer to secure the position, pop up into a neon position of some type, and I like to relocate high on the threat if I can. I also make it a point to smother the hands anytime I pop up into a neon position. One of the reasons is because what kills you? The hands do. What tries to go for your weapon system? Their hands. What tries to access their weapon systems if they have them? Their hands do. So it makes you keenly aware of their hands, and it trains it into your reaction to smother those. And you saw today we are going to a high position on the body, a neon shoulder. Yes, it could be on the head. We're training on the shoulder because I want the guys to train with me another day. And it also helps me learn to deal with this if I'm the bottom man. One other drill that we plugged in was the rocking guard drill. And the purpose of the drill is to learn the mechanics to disrupt your opponent's base in that closed guard. And we can see that when I don't do that, he just has free reins. The guy can go to town on me. But if I can disrupt his base, it limits the amount of striking options he has. It puts him in an off-balance position, which is good for me, gives me opportunity to survive and to counterattack and sweep as he reacts to it. Guys, if you like the material that we're covering today, we're looking at some ground position material from the Combat Blueprint, and you want to check out some of the other videos we have done, you can do so right up here. If you enjoyed the content today and you want to see more of it, give us a like and a subscribe. Also, we're looking for your input on future videos. If there's something you'd like to see, give us a comment below.